What's going on, good people? It's your boy Scott Proctor alongside my guy Ellis L. Williams, who covers the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. You already know the deal by now. It's episode 3 of Real Spill, where the truth wins. And let's hop right into things, my boy, with bump and run. Talk about the previous week's biggest headlines. Let's start right here because the London games, hey, they've been crazy, bro. They've been crazy. Packers blew a 17-3 lead as the Giants improved to 4-1 with a comeback win. Ellis, are you worried about the Packers right now at this point? And you know I like to ask two questions at once. Are the Giants legit at 4-1?
Man, what a year we've already had, right? Like,
Crazy,
just those two questions alone, it's like, are the Packers struggling? And can a team that runs Wildcat and has Daniel Jones at quarterback actually make it to the playoffs?
Questions you just wouldn't even think you would have been asking before the season started.
But and here we are. And the answer, Scott, is quite simple. This Packers offense cannot generate explosive plays. They are a catch and release type of offense. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers gets that ball out and sprays it immediately. They're running flats. They're running quicks. And when those passes aren't available, their offense doesn't have an answer, i.e. the final two plays of the game. You're seeing quick throws from Aaron Rodgers get batted at the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
For some reason, they don't want to run A.J. Dillon down there. It seems like they're having a little play calling struggle right now, plus a lack of explosiveness. On the flip side of that, the New York Giants, look, Brian Daboll is doing a heck of a job maximizing this roster. They're playing with wide receivers that we don't even recognize the name of. And that's saying something coming from that D3 background and having to have an eye on
seriously
marginal players, right?
Yeah.
It's exciting seeing what the Giants are doing, but this is really about the Packers and where their season goes after this, how they respond to this.
I agree because the Packers had all the expectations, right? Like you said, I love Daboll. He was arguably my favorite head coaching candidate in this cycle, him and Mike McDaniel, and he's shown that. He's really turned around the culture there in the Giants, and that was the biggest thing. Somebody to just bring in a winning culture there in New York. It seems as though Brian Daboll early on has brought that, but yeah, you're right, man. The Packers appear like a mess to me. The defense was touted as a top 5 unit before the season. I don't see it. That defense isn't as good as many people thought that it would be, and that defense isn't going to be able to just simply win them games. So Aaron Rodgers, you can't be getting shut out in the second half. I understand that you're a little bit bereft of weapons on the perimeter, but you have two dogs in that backfield, and Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Matt LaFleur needs to realize that and give them some more touches when they're struggling offensively like they have through 5 or so weeks of the NFL season. But let's talk about Sunday night's game. This past Sunday night's game, of course, where the Ravens knocked off the Bengals at the gun on Sunday Night Football in a low-scoring, a throwback AFC North kind of matchup. Which team do you like to win the division? I assume it's the Ravens. If it's not, let me know. But also, too, is the Bengals Super Bowl hangover real?
Yeah, this Bengals team has got a lot of issues, starting with just their inability to run the football.
Yeah.
Right? Like Joe Mixon is getting the opportunities. He's not scoring from in close. This offensive line that they thought they rebuilt looks exactly like last year's squad, except the 3 of the 5 players are different, right? And essentially, defenses are playing too high against them. And when you don't have that extra defender in the box, you should be able to run the football, and you can't. I'm real worried about that Bengals offense, as the defense, which no one talks about, is really the strong suit of that team and carrying them. And as for the Ravens, I do think that they would be the favorite to win the AFC North, but they've got some questions too. This defense is kind of is a little bit of a house of cards right now. You've seen Lamar Jackson even out after some real explosive performances.
Yeah.
The Browns really have been right there, except that defense can't stop anybody. And obviously they've got some things that'll change at quarterback, of course.
No doubt.
The AFC North remains one of the most fun, interesting divisions in football.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating division, man. I mean, the Ravens, you touched on it. That secondary is worrisome, especially in the AFC with a lot of quarterbacks, with a lot of, top tier receivers. That's going to be something to watch as the season moves along. And I'm somewhat of a Bengals fan, mostly because of Joe Burrow, and I'm really disappointed what I've seen out of them through 5 weeks or so. I think Zach Taylor deserves a lot of that blame, but offensively up front, La'el Collins was supposed to be brought in to be a stalwart at that tackle spot, and he has been anything but.
Right.
You mentioned it, Joe Burrow. It seems like he's still playing behind the same offensive line that made him the most sacked quarterback in the NFL last season, so that's not great either. I agree with you. I think the Ravens run away with this division, but maybe optimistically, I still think the Bengals are a team that can sneak in as a wild card. But like you said, that this division is going to be fascinating to watch. Really good teams, good quarterbacks as well, especially at the top. So I can't wait to see how this one shakes out, man. Let's move on, man. Let's move on to the big spill because we got a big one this weekend, man. Let's talk about it, man. The Bills dog walked the Pittsburgh Steelers and Kenny Pickett's first start on Sunday afternoon before the Chiefs overcame a 20-7 deficit to beat the Raiders on Monday Night Football behind 4 Travis Kelce touchdowns, which sets up now arguably the most hyped regular season matchup in, maybe some time, maybe a few years between the Bills and Chiefs in Arrowhead on Sunday afternoon. It's a rematch of last season's AFC divisional matchup, which was just an all-timer, which obviously the Chiefs won in overtime before losing in the AFC title game. Are these the 2 best teams in the AFC that we're going to watch face off on Sunday?
This is Harry Potter versus Voldemort at the quarterback position. These are the 2 primetime wizards of our generation.
Talk to them.
Right, dog? Duking it out. I'm just watching these Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen clips on Twitter and these arm angles. I'd love to hear what you think about it, man. Like these guys can't ever teach anyone how to play quarterback. If you
and young kids really shouldn't be trying to watch and try to emulate what these guys are doing because it's special. It's special, and not everybody can do that. And it almost seems like they're having a competition week in and week out. Who can do the craziest things, with these arm angles? And I mean, Mahomes had one on Monday Night Football. I think he hit MVS right over the middle. He shrugged off a defender and then just literally just flinged it on the money right in the middle of the field to MVS. It was just like, come on, dude.
Dog, it's nuts. If there are any parents listening and you have the opportunity to sign your child up for a Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen quarterback clinic, run for the hills.
Don't do it.
Do not do it.
Don't do it. Man,
that's with all due respect, but
absolutely,
because what they're doing is just it's never been seen before. We thought we'd never get another Patrick Mahomes, and now we have one in Josh Allen. They play differently, but at the end of the day, they are equally explosive and rule breaking. And look, Scott, when we were talking about this game before we came on, I was like, man, I can't wait for Sunday night, or man, I can't wait for Monday night. Maybe it's Thursday night. It could be tomorrow, man. This is Sunday at 4:25, man.
Yep.
I get it. That's a late afternoon window, but for some of us, we won't really be able to watch much of that game, man.
I feel bad for you, my guy.
Right.
I know you'll still be tuned in, though. Nonetheless, I know you'll still be tuned in. There'll be plenty to talk about afterwards, man. But since we're talking about the quarterbacks, man, which 2 of these do you trust more in a big spot? Not that this weekend is the biggest spot. It's still a regular season. It's still week 6 or so. But which of these 2 quarterbacks do you trust from what you've seen over their young careers? Do you trust more in a big spot? Because both of them, obviously, we expect to be playing in big, important games as the winter approaches.
Man, this is like asking me to decide between that filet mignon and that lobster tail, man. Look, I'm not going to go wrong here, right? But you can't. But I will say this, almost fittingly, that lobster tail probably costs a little more on the menu being Josh Allen, but I'm going to fall back on that filet mignon because it's never let me down before. Yes. The reason for this answer, Scotty Bands, the touchdown that Patrick Mahomes threw last week to Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the back of the end zone, to me encapsulates the unpredictability of Patrick Mahomes. Like, there's just no way that becomes a touchdown. He flips it. Evading a guy on the sideline. They're just Josh Allen can make every throw too, but there's just something about Patrick Mahomes' ability to anticipate the unforeseen, the future. He's just a millisecond faster than everybody, and that's why I think I give him the edge.
I completely agree with you. Mahomes is definitely my answer, man. He's just different. He's so just calm and collected in those late moments. Obviously, he's the greatest comeback quarterback in NFL history. I mean, there's no lead safe with Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And honestly, too, this might be crazy to say, but this might be the best version of the Chiefs offense that we're seeing this season without Tyreek Hill, because there's such, as the word you use, there's such an unpredictability with this offense. In years past, if you can play too high and you can bracket coverage Tyreek Hill and you can chip Travis Kelce at the line of scrimmage and you're feeling pretty decent about your chances. But now with Tyreek Hill out of the picture and MVS and Juju and Hardman and now Clyde Edwards-Helaire out the backfield, 2 other really good backs, and obviously Kelce is still the best tight end in football, is they can just attack you at so many different angles. You can't really game plan. And I think that makes Patrick Mahomes, this Chiefs offense, just so much scary. I think Patrick Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the NFL, maybe the best quarterback to ever play the game. But we're talking about these two teams. Let's talk about the AFC kind of in a bigger vacuum, I guess, so to speak. Is there an AFC team that you can see in a conference title game besides these two?
Man, right now it feels like this is it, right? Like this is a 2-horse race. Like you look at the quarterbacks in this league and then how their defenses are playing.
Right.
Because we haven't even talked about how this
didn't even touch the defense, which are
right?
both playing amazing right now. We expected the Bills to be a great defense, but I think the Chiefs' defense is kind of being underrated right now.
Exactly.
Great point.
It's these two.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree with you. I think the Ravens might have a say in it late, but I think we're all heading and expecting a Chiefs Bills, AFC Championship game down. But let's get to the meat. Let's get to the meat, man. Obviously, with the Carolina Panthers are on the prowl segment, man. It's been made official. The Panthers fired Matt Rhule earlier this week after an 11-27 record during his 38-game tenure in Carolina. Ellis, man, I know there's been a lot. You've been right there in the middle of this in Charlotte this week, but I'll ask you this way out the gate. Was this the right move for the Panthers? And probably more importantly, was this the right time to fire Matt Rhule?
This was the right move for the Carolina Panthers in the sense that owner David Tepper was not going to have a quicker way to win back the Panthers fan base and instill any real belief in where this team was going. There's an almost near impossible balance that an owner has to strike, and in consequence, a general manager has to strike, and then thus a head coach, in building for the future while understanding what is necessary in the short term.
Yeah.
And internally, when you're trying to build a culture, stability is the most important ingredient in starting a process of winning. When you remove a head coach, stability exits your building.
Yep.
What that means for the next 12 games is going to land on interim head coach Steve Wilkes, who this locker room in Carolina believes in. He's been here before. He's an elder statesman of this league, despite being one of the younger coaches in it. He brings a calming presence. But as for where this goes next, it is a really unstable situation for two reasons. One, this team has no idea who's even going to start at quarterback. Baker Mayfield likely out 2 to 6 weeks with an ankle injury, leaving just PJ Walker as the active quarterback on this roster, considering Matt Corral, a rookie, had a Liz Frank injury and surgery earlier in the season, and Sam Darnold's still not ready to be activated off the injured reserve list. Right. And then the owner David Tepper also did not commit to the long-term future of general manager Scott Fitterer. When you don't know who your general manager is after the season, you don't have a head coach, and your quarterback is not getting the job done.
Tough place to be.
Scotty Bands, where does that leave the Carolina Panthers?
In flux.
Exactly.
To say the least. In flux, to say the least. You mentioned David Tepper. I'm curious. I know you were at his press conference on Monday. I'm curious what stood out to you the most. I know you asked a great question during that press conference as well, but what stood out to you the most from David Tepper, Panthers owner, press conference on Monday in lieu of the firing of Matt Rhule?
I think it's the fact that owner David Tepper understands that he's still learning at this, and he's willing to admit that. He had similar sentiment when he last spoke to the media on April 27th, the day before the NFL draft. And it was a humble, retrospective David Tepper who, again, admitted, I still have a lot to learn with this. And then that came full circle this week when he discussed his reasoning for firing Matt Rhule and thus owning the fact that he picked the wrong coach, or at least the coach that could not get the job done in the allotted time that David Tepper allowed him, right?
Panthers fans might not want to hear that their favorite team's owner is quote unquote new to this and still learning, but I would think that they might find some solace in the fact that at least he's willing to admit it, that he doesn't have all the answers, that he's made some mistakes. And I think at least, like I said, Panthers fans could find solace in those comments. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, because you're exactly right. Like, all you can do is own your mistakes and try and improve on them going forward. Now, everything that matters after this is what we already had talked about: how the next head coach is chosen, who the general manager is, and then how this collective of owner David Tepper, Scott Fitterer, and then the next head coach find the quarterback. So it's really the idea that, all right, Mr. Tepper, you say you've learned from this. Now you've got about 6 to 12 months to show that you have, and we shall see, right?
Yeah, it's going to be an important next, 6 to 12 month window here for the Panthers franchise as a whole. What are your first impressions of Steve Wilks, the new interim head coach of the Panthers? I know he's born and raised in Charlotte. Like you said, he's the elder statesman of the NFL. Is there a chance he ends up being the guy moving forward, or do you really just get the sense this is an exclusively interim role? Is there a chance for Steve Wilks to prove here in Carolina that he deserves to be an NFL head coach moving forward?
I was once told by an OG of this league that head coaching positions are not selected, they're elected. And I think that is really important to keep in mind over these next few months as Steve Wilks coaches the Carolina Panthers, and thus behind closed doors, the search for the next Carolina Panthers head coach begins. Because make no mistake about it, Steve Wilks is auditioning for that opportunity.
Right.
But from the mouth of David Tepper himself in that press conference, he said Steve Wilks would have to do an incredible job to remain head coach of the Carolina Panthers, telling you that there's other candidates in mind, right? So he has a lot to prove. He has a heck of an opportunity because, Scott, you understand this as you laid that out with him being a hometown kid.
Yep.
There's nothing stronger, whether in sports, football, life, or Game of Thrones, than narrative.
Facts.
And if somehow this hometown kid can get the Carolina Panthers in the playoffs, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of hope and momentum going, man, I don't know how you don't ride that momentum and name Steve Wilks your long-term head coach, but that's why they play the game.
Absolutely, man. One last question for you quickly before we hop on to our next segment, man. There's been rumblings, rumors of somewhat of a fire sale from the Panthers, franchise in terms of trying to unload some of their more important pieces to, build for the future, get draft picks back. Who would be the guy that you think would be the first one to go from the Panthers in the trade scenario, and where is the destination you see him landing?
Interesting. So it's a really good question. Robbie Anderson's a name you have to watch, largely just because you got to consider who Matt Rhule's guys were. This happens when regimes change, sometimes when quarterbacks change. Think back to the Cleveland Browns. Austin Hooper and Baker Mayfield were close on and off the field.
Right.
When Baker leaves, Austin Hooper ends up in Tennessee. So these things happen, right? Robbie Anderson is a guy who still has value in this league. A team like the Rams could use a vertical down the field threat. So I think names like Robbie Anderson, Marquise Haynes, he's a defensive end who a team could use. You got to look at the surplus positions, right? Defensive end, wide receiver, defensive back. Names like Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, unlikely. Contracts are too big. And at the end of the day, you're trying to keep marquee players, right? Not sell them for hope and retain and try and find players that you already have.
No doubt. Obviously, CMC, DJ Moore, the popular names, but I like Robbie Anderson. I think that's just, especially in LA, they needed deep threat. Robbie Anderson fits that mold, kind of like a OBJ light kind of version, Robbie Anderson. I like that a lot. Let's move on, though, man, to nickel and dime, man. Talk about who wasn't even worth a nickel last week and who was a 10, man. Start me out with your dime. L, talk to me, my guy.
Scotty Bands, look. My dime goes to Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce, who had not one, not two, not three, but 4 touchdowns on Monday Night Football, and he didn't eclipse 30 yards doing it. Look, Scotty, I know when he had 3 touchdowns and the Chiefs were down there on the 2-yard line, everybody who in America knew that next one was going to Travis Kelce, because in the huddle they were like, "Hey, Trav, we getting you 4, bro. We getting you 4." Is that not what was said? That's what was said.
Facts. And Mahomes is the guy to get him that too. I mean, obviously they've had that kind of relationship. Travis Kelce's the best tight end in football, man. I love that dime, man. I'm gonna go to our first special teams dime of the year, man. Justin Tucker. I mean, the man made 4 field goals on Sunday night, including a game-winning 43-yard kick. He scored 13 points by himself on Sunday night. The Bengals, as an entire team, had 17. So it's got to be a great feeling if you're the Ravens late in games to know all you have to do is just get in the field goal range.
Thanks.
And you still have the best, most accurate kicker in NFL history on your side, who also happens to be very much clutch. So JT is my dime. I'm going to go to my nickel, man. It's Aaron Rodgers, man. We talked about it a little bit at the top. I don't understand how you go an entire second half without mustering a single offensive point. Obviously, he played well, threw 2 touchdowns in the first half, but to lose to the Giants, being up 20-7 and being non-existent as an offense in the second half, that's just unacceptable, whether you have weapons or not on the perimeter. Aaron Rodgers is my nickel for this week. How about you, man?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that one. And my nickel goes to an offensive leader in his own right. But my first time picking a head coach, it's Bengals head coach Zach Taylor, man.
Yeah,
like look, before last year, we could check the first coach fired odds from Vegas a year ago, maybe 13 months ago at this time, and Zach Taylor would have been right up there, right?
Yeah.
Super Bowl run, no one says anything, and now the warts are back. And for some reason, this offense isn't looking right, and you're not going to get rid of Joe Burrow. You're not going to blame Jamar Chase. It lands on the guy calling the plays and who's that head coach. They got a lot to figure out in Cincinnati.
No doubt about it. Our producer, RJ, is doing a great job producing our show. We actually talked about this on Monday just a little bit about Zach Taylor, how they show his record on primetime games before games, and it looks very similar to the record of Matt Rhule, who was just fired. But it's like they have to put his postseason record there underneath just to make it look acceptable. Obviously, 100%. His postseason record is 3-1 since they went to the Super Bowl last year. But no, I'm with you. Zach Taylor, he's got to be better, man. But let's move on to our last segment, man, our 2-minute drill, preview a few matchups of this upcoming week. Let's start about the one that we talked about in the big spill, man. What are you expecting this weekend out of Bills, Chiefs, and who do you got winning?
You know what? I just feel like the Bills are on a roll. Now, this is very different from an AFC Championship prediction or Super Bowl prediction because we talk different, but this Bills offense is on an absolute roll right now. Stephon Diggs is going to score twice. I like the Bills in that one.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. I think it wouldn't surprise me if the Bills win this game, particularly because it's in the regular season and they seem to play better in the regular season, especially in Arrowhead. But I'm gonna pick with the Chiefs. I think they're at home. I still think they have the better quarterback. They have the better coach. So I like the Chiefs to win a very close, high-scoring game. Another one that we're all going to remember for a long time. But how about Sunday Night Football, man? A huge NFC East matchup. The Cowboys going to Philadelphia to play the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. Who do you like in that one?
Man, this is where narrative takes over and I stop using my football mind. I just want to see the Cowboys win, and I want to watch that Jerry Jones press conference right after the game, whenever he's spotted up, man. Like, man, this Cowboy Cooper Rush stuff is hilarious, and I'm all for it.
It is hilarious. It is hilarious. I think it comes to a bit of a bitter end on Sunday night, to be honest with you. I think the Eagles are different, man. And we talked about it last week or maybe the week before. Jalen Hurts is him, man. He's different, man. Something that stood out to me, he was going through his press conference before last week's game against the Arizona Cardinals, and he went through an entire press conference fielding question after question. At the end of it, he asked the reporters, like, you guys didn't ask anything about the Arizona Cardinals who were about to play on Sunday. Let's not forget that this is a good team. Like, Jalen Hurts is locked in, and he's not about any of the other BS. He wants to play football and show that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I like the Eagles on Sunday night. How about the last one here, man? Monday Night Football, Broncos at Chargers. Two kind of underwhelming AFC West teams so far this season. Who do you like in that Monday Night Football matchup?
How much longer are they going to make us all keep watching Mr. Limited for? But the Chargers can't stop anyone either. And Brandon Staley just wants to go for it on 4th and 13 from anywhere. I don't know. I don't know who's going to win this game. The less competent of the two are going to win. How about that analysis?
Yo, I knew you were going to get something off about Mr. Limited, man. But, man, I got to go with the Chargers, man. I can't trust the Broncos to score touchdowns, let alone win games. So give me Justin Herbert and the crew on Monday Night Football, man. But this has been a blast, as always, my guy. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to episode 3 of Real Spill, where the truth wins. It's your boy, Scott Proctor. And from my guy, Ellis L. Williams right here, we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out our other videos and don't forget to smack that subscribe button down below while you're at it. Also, for more great and original content, head right over to bvmsports.com.